Why did you close Silo? It was a big green Michelin star, fully booked.
I'm addicted to innovation. I need my next hit. They would fill a skip full of food waste every single day. This was criminal behavior. I didn't pay myself for 5 years. I literally slept above the toilet with mice.
How do you make zero waste go into the DNA of chefs?
Because if your 3 Michelin star restaurant is the planet, you don't get 3 stars. That's bullshit. My favorite quality in any human is if you are willing to be wrong.
Всім привіт! Ви дивитесь і слухаєте подкаст «Реве та стогне ресторатор» від Постер, української системи обліку для закладів.
І ми його ведучі Міралі Ділбазі та Павло Полторакін.
Цей сезон виходить за підтримки комбо LeakPay від Приватбанк, Постер QR та MasterCard. Сьогодні в нас нестандартний гість, і весь випуск буде англійською. Для того, щоб включити українські субтитри, оберіть необхідну опцію в YouTube-плеєрі. Ми спеціально завантажили її для вас.
Підписуйтесь на канал, пишіть коментарі і приймайте участь в розіграші в цьому випуску.
Hi, Douglas.
Hello, how you doing?
Thank you. We are doing great. I'm a little bit nervous because it will be the first podcast that we will make in English. But I think that everything will be really great.
Thank you for not making me speak Ukrainian.
Okay.
It's for next time.
Next time I will be fluent.
So could you please introduce yourself?
My name is Duglasa MacMaster. I'm from England and I'm a chef, or I used to be a chef. I'm not so much a chef anymore. I'm a chef this week.
Okay.
But I have ran and operated a restaurant called Silo for approximately 15 years, the project, as a restaurant in the UK, in England, for 11 years. And I just closed that in December, a few months ago.
Could we go back to the very beginning, and could you please tell us how the idea of Silo was born?
I didn't like being bullied in a kitchen. I didn't like being shouted at all the time because that person's big ego has had a bad day. Like, I don't like that. I don't want to be treated like that. I don't like that in some of the world's best restaurants. It's so pretentious. I don't like that the bin is as tall as Mount Everest. I don't like that food was always cooked in a plastic bag. There's a lot of things I just didn't think were right. And so because of maybe a childhood of rebelling and feeling not listened to, not heard, I wanted to fight for something. I wanted to fight for something that I think is important. So this restaurant in Sydney where I was working, there was and I'm not exaggerating, this might not translate, but a skip. So a skip is an industrial size bin. It's this shape, metal, massive. You could get 20, 30 people in a skip. It's huge, massive. And they would fill a skip full of food waste every single day. This was one of the world's best restaurants. And every single day, food waste filling a skip. This was criminal behavior. And I was looking around being like, is anybody else seeing this? And, you got these studious chefs, chop, 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 chop. What? Yes, chef. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, how can no one see how bad this is? This is terrible. This was the best produce in the world. If you've ever been to Australia, you'll know the produce is just like, and to waste so much of it for a menu, filled with very forgettable moments of gluttony. It's whatever. It was technically very, very, very good, but it doesn't excuse that level of, it's not just waste, it's an insult to nature, And so that's what I think about a lot, about what does nature want? What does nature think is sustainable? What does nature think is ethical? And so Silo wasn't born the day it opened. It wasn't born when I was sad with looking at food waste. You know, it was born through all of these events, and eventually became an expression. And I have to credit a guy called Joost Bakker, Joost Bakker, so Dutch guy, Australian. He was raised in Australia. He's an absolute genius, and he is my mentor in life. I had lots of good mentors. I worked at a restaurant called St. John, and I had 2 very, very good mentors at St. John. So I've been very lucky to have had also like people that think differently, people that want to wrestle with the world that is presented to them. You know, they want to wrestle. They want to like, no, let's make it better. Let's make it better. So I've had some good mentors, and Joost, he's an artist. He's not in the food industry. He believes deeply about nature and biodynamic farming and syntropic agriculture, blah, blah, blah. And he said to me, as a young chef, I was 24, very young, could you have no bin? And that was like, poof, it's like my head cracked open and I could just start seeing into the future. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's kind of correct. The inspiration that poured out of me for 15 years, you know, it's slowed down now. But when he asked that question, I was like, whoa, like almost like a psychedelic, you know, like when you take psychedelics and you see something, you know, that like common thing when you take psychedelics and you realize that you are part of this infinite web, you know, kind of like that, but totally just through experience, to thinking, through a moment of like clarity. And so that's the most significant, I think, way to describe why Silo exists.
Yeah, honestly, it is really awesome because as I understand, Silo is really was guided by this motto, by not having a bin in the kitchen for the whole 15 years.
Yep, exactly.
Great. And could you please tell us about Silo as a project?
Sure. So yeah, originally it was driven by this very clear, and it still is driven by this very clear vision. So the bit that happened just after that guy Joost said not having a bin or whatever, that was in Sydney. And then we decided together to have a project called Silo, which I didn't name. It wasn't my name. In fact, it wasn't Joost's name either. But anyway, it doesn't matter.
And whose name it was?
It's a very bad man, somebody who we really dislike, came up with the name, which is unfortunate for me and Joost. But anyway, we opened Silo as a concept in 2012. I met Joost in 2011, and then a year later we opened Silo, and it was a kind of small cafe in Melbourne. And that's when, you know, this like just kept going and going and going, and this landslide of revelation and clarity. And I've never felt more alive and possessed. I felt possessed, you know, like it wasn't me. It was something. I was like an antenna, you know, like an antenna, like on a phone, and some signal was coming down through me, and it was really, it was amazing. It was an amazing feeling, and I was having these, so I had this vision of a bin in the jungle. I was like, a bin in the jungle? Like, what does that mean? I genuinely saw it in my head. I genuinely had that vision, and I wasn't taking psychedelics or I wasn't drinking wine, and I could see it, and I was like, what does that mean? A bin in the jungle. And that led to this revelation. There is no bin in the jungle. Of course there's not. Of course there isn't. And there is no bin in the ocean. The bin is a human thing. We made the bin. Humans are why nature is suffering. You know, we talk about sustainability. We humans have this responsibility to fix waste, to fix sustainability. You know, we are unsustainability. All the other things on planet Earth are in balance. It's just us that go further and further out of balance. Creatively taking away that bin, reverse engineered the entire restaurant. And that's what made Silo. It made Silo unique. It made us maybe the most creative restaurant on the planet. Because we had to. It wasn't because we were a bunch of creative people. It's because when you have no general waste bin, how do you get all the ingredients? How do you get all the objects? How do you get the light bulbs? How do you get a tablecloth? How do you get everything you need, the thousands of materials a restaurant needs? How do you get that when there's no general waste bin? Because everything's wrapped in plastic.
Okay.
And so we went to extreme lengths to find everything that we need with no single-use plastic. And that changed everything. That changed the way we see food, nature. It made us cook completely differently. It made us discover fermentation. It made us discover crushing wine bottles and turning it into plates and tiles. And it just changed our consciousness. It changed our architecture in our brain for the better, you know? And so, yeah, enormous creativity was born from that limitation. So yeah, that's a little bit about how Silo exists. Yeah.
Great, thanks. It is a really interesting concept that limitation make something great for you. And for the last years, could you please explain what Silo was? It was a restaurant in London that I know.
Yeah. So there's been versions of Silo. Melbourne was a little cafe as a concept, and that was me and Joost, and that was a year. And then I came back to England because of family. I had some, my dad wasn't very well, so I had to come back to England. And that's where Joost, this artist, said, you know, you are Silo. You know, you take Silo, you are Silo. So he gave me the responsibility of this zero waste restaurant. And then I started it in a city called Brighton, which is on the south coast of England. I always wanted to open Silo in London, but I was 26 at the time and I couldn't afford London. And then we signed a 5-year contract in Brighton and then started in London. And that was 6 years in London. So there's these different chapters of Silo. And now is a very different chapter, because the purpose, that vision, that, you know, zero waste vision feels complete. I don't just want to run a restaurant. I not motivated by running a restaurant. I'm motivated by sharing good ideas. And those good ideas, I think, have been shared very well for a lot of years, 15 years. And now the chapter is changing. Silo is not done. Silo will have another chapter, maybe this year. There's a secret project that will be the next chapter, but a small chapter. There's a small, interesting, experimental chapter this year in October. And then maybe something after, but you know, it's good sometimes it's good to have a plan. And then sometimes if you don't know, if you're not motivated by something clear, then maybe it's not good to have a plan. Maybe see where the flow of, you know, the world we live in, because the world we live in is moving in many directions. And, you know, I think it's good to remain and we can choose, you can choose, I can choose, to produce positive energy. You can choose that. That's your decision.
Друзі, нагадуємо, що партнерами нашого подкасту є комбо. Постер QR, лікпей від Приватбанк та MasterCard. Постер QR – це меню, оплата, чайові та відгуки для вашого закладу. Все за одним QR-кодом. А завдяки платіжному рішенню лікпей від Приватбанку комісія з кожного чека 1,3%, а комісія на чайові офіціанта 1,7%. Посилання з детальним описом, як завжди, під цим відео. Why did you close Silo? It was a big green Michelin star, fully booked, 11 years in 6 years in London, 15 years for the project.
So there's many answers, but the most practical answer was that I became a dad. Okay. So I became a dad, and the way I was living was unsustainable for fatherhood. But then also from a more artistic point of view, I believe, and Miralee and myself have spoken about this over dinner last night, I don't just want to, exist. And the purpose of Silo was not to just exist. As soon as we stopped innovating and the creativity went down, I want to shake things again. At the beginning, it was we were wrestling with the way the industry was presented to us. How waste was presented to us. Like waste in fine dining restaurants was like a mountain, and I don't accept that. And so we've wrestled with that, and we've made I think a very clear message, and that's established, and I want to keep doing that throughout my entire life. When I'm 50, when I'm 60, I want to keep wrestling in a positive way. I'm not talking about aggression. I'm talking about love. I'm talking about doing it in a way that is light. I'm not beating people and saying, stop wasting things. That's not happening. We're just doing our own thing, producing positive energy, producing positive ideas. Hopefully it's delicious. Hopefully it's a beautiful experience. Hopefully the team feel inspired to go and make their own positive energy. We are creating good things, really, really good things. And those good things start to become normal, which is great. But then for me personally, and that Silo brand, which I guess is me, if I feel myself slowing down, I want to change. It's a blessing and a curse. Okay. I think all creative people have this. It's an appetite. Some might say it's an addiction.
Maybe. So addiction for innovation.
Yes, I'm addicted to innovation. I need my next hit.
Okay, great, thanks.
What will be your recommendation if Ukrainian restaurants come to Silo system today, like first step for them?
Farming and agriculture. That's something that your restaurant does very well. We did this unique thing at Silo that was to take away a general waste bin, so like plastic and bad materials, right? And that was important to teach us about agriculture. But ultimately, here in Ukraine, the most important thing, not just in Ukraine, everywhere, any person in the food system can do is vote for nature. And what that means is, if a farm or farming system is conventional, maybe not organic, a big monoculture. And that farmer wakes up one day and he or she says, this needs to change. Like, we need to be organic, or we need to be more organic, or we need to be thinking about soil health. We need to be thinking about earthworms, creating better water movement through soil. We need to have more insects and more pollinators. We need to have, if that farmer, no matter how bad that farming system is, has the intention to go good, to go natural, to go to nature, to support these natural systems. The most important thing we could do in restaurants, in cafes, in bars, in roasteries is support that intention. It is good to support the best farmers who are really caring for the soil, of course. But I think they're already going to get support, of course, because the best farmers have the best produce, and we already support people with the best produce because we want
the best.
Delicious perfection, right? But it's those people that want to change, to be better farmers. And for our teams, it's like ultimately the biggest priority is to support people who are supporting natural systems. And it seems obvious to us. Of course we will do that, of course. But maybe not everyone listening in restaurants have that same intention. And if, maybe they're slowly starting to consider, the future and, bringing more positive energy into our mind, into our microbiome, then this is maybe important or, good instruction. And so choose that supply chain very carefully and work closer to those people. I don't know exactly what the supply chains in Ukraine are like, but in England and a lot of Europe, you have the farmer, the chef, and then the middleman, the industrial food system. And quality becomes, we lose relationship with nature. We lose the feeling of being part of nature.
It's the same. So in Ukraine also you have some people who in the center between the farmer and chef. So it's problem to connect with chefs and with farmers.
And so how do we go around? How do we get to the farmer? That's the challenge, and that's a big challenge. But even if it's a little bit, even if it's inviting the farmer to your restaurant.
Yes, it's a problem that in Ukraine small farmers, doesn't earn enough money, and usually it's a fight between the suppliers and farmers for price.
Yeah.
So it's not respectful relationships between the farmers, chefs, or suppliers.
I think that's respectful relationships with farmers. It's maybe if food has to come through the middleman, how else can we, connect? How else can we improve this relationship? How can they improve their relationship? Without understanding the intricacies of these supply chains, it's hard for me to say exactly how to do it. But it's just driving improvement within that system. I think the most important thing isn't, using plastic. That is important. And we don't know the downstream consequences of microplastics in our water, in our system, in our whatever. But more important is doing things, making decisions that benefit the farmer, the natural system, the people that are supporting nature. It's what can we do? It doesn't have to be extreme. Doesn't have to be like a massive revolution in your kitchen, but just like these small things that improve awareness to your guests about, you know, this is made from blah 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 blah. You know, it's bringing nature closer to the restaurant, to the team culturally, is the most important thing we can do, and it's different for everyone. In every kitchen, in every restaurant, in every roastery, we all have different, you know, you work in coffee. Maybe my answer is quite vague, but it's a very big system. It's very big, and there's just millions of variables. So it is hard to be specific. Another thing which I would say that is specific is for restaurants to delete cling film.
It's a big problem.
It is a big problem. And sous vide bags are good. They're really good. Sous vide bags are great. They're great for food waste. They're great for fermentation, consistency. Consistency reduces food waste. I like sous vide bags. Well, I don't like sous vide bags, but Silo doesn't have sous vide bags. But I appreciate people using them, and there's a very good argument for sous vide bags. Cling film, delete.
Okay.
Delete. Have lids for the containers. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's it. You know, some people say, oh, you know, I've got this salad in a bowl and I need to cling film it. It's like, put it in a tub with a lid, you know. You don't need cling film.
Maybe you can give some practical advice based on your experience how to work with farmers, like what you experienced in Silo.
Yeah, I mean, just do a quick search. What farmers are close to your restaurant, your whatever hospitality business? Can you drive there? Can you take a train there? Can you take a bus there? Whatever. Like, you locate your farmers in your area. How much produce could you acquire from that farmer? And visit the farmer, have a conversation, take them a product from your restaurant, take them something that you're proud of, something that you love. I baked this cake, I've made this coffee, I don't know. Just give them some time, look in their eyes, you know, and just have a conversation with them. You'll be amazed how it changes your consciousness. I can guarantee that it will change how you see the food industry. Guarantee. And that's a good thing. And go to your local farms, have a conversation, and then just see what opportunities, like win-win opportunities there are with that farm, with that supply chain, foraging, you know, even if there's no farmer, what can we forage? And this starts to change a lot. You know, connecting to nature. So sometimes, you know, when you say, oh, connecting to nature, it just sounds a little bit like, yeah, whatever. But like, no, not whatever. Like the sound of a running stream, the sound of the wind going through trees calms our nervous system. This is absolutely a fact. So when we connect to nature, there is very practical values to that. And so like going foraging is, you know, you're deeply immersed into some wild nature and picking that, you know, the scent, the fragrance, the feel. This is all what we are wired to do. Literally millions of years of evolution. So not doing that is bad for our mental health. Of course it is. Living in urban square places, not hearing sounds that are familiar with that natural world is of course bad for our mental health. So go foraging. Okay. You know, grow some herbs on your balcony or whatever. Just do a bit of nature.
If we talk about fermentation, how it's like trend now, and trend maybe 10 years now, how fermentation help you in Silo work with food cost and save money, also save products and your footprint?
It's my favorite subject, fermentation. I think it's a lot of chefs' favorite subject, and roasters, and especially in the coffee world. Like co-fermentation, anaerobic, like it's pretty exciting what's happening with fermentation in coffee. But from a sort of an environmental point of view, there's a lot of significance. There's a lot of applications that are emerging through the discovery of, fermentation technique that can do really good things environmentally. If nature was sat at this table, nature would be like, yeah, this
fermentation is great.
Fermentation's great. So good. Mm-hmm. So there are different types of fermentation. Common types of fermentation in the kitchen. We have lactic acid bacteria, lab. So like sauerkraut and kimchi and, that sort of category of fermentation. That's amazing. I practice that. Every week at home and in the restaurant. So before I came to Ukraine, my fridge had, 10 fresh ingredients. Some a lot, some a little, mixed vegetables that I didn't eat. I didn't eat because I went to the farmer's market, I bought some vegetables, and then I got invited to dinner, and I went to my friend's house, and then, there's food waste in my veg drawer. And so my ritual before I go traveling is to chop the vegetables and maybe some fruits, herbs, and 2% salt in a big bowl, massage it and then stick it into a jar. And then when I go for 8 days to Ukraine, I'll come back and those lactic acid bacterias have populated into my jar, and I have a beautiful, crunchy, bright sauerkraut or kimchi. And so that's a type of fermentation, and that's myself at home, not wasting food, not wasting flavor, not wasting nutrition, and not wasting money. Right. Just through lactic acid bacteria and the art of fermentation. So then you've got the drinks fermentations. I'll just name 3, but there's obviously lots of types of fermentation. But drinks fermentations, maybe before I go to Ukraine, I have a SCOBY or some kefir grains, or maybe I don't. And so there are 3 great ways to ferment. Maybe I have banana skins. Mm-hmm. Maybe, the core of the apple. I've eaten the apple and there's an apple core. And maybe I have fruit waste or whatever. Like I can add that into a kombucha or a kefir or a tepache. Tepache is great because you don't need a SCOBY for kombucha. You don't need kefir grains. You don't need anything. You just need sugar, water, and a jar. And you put the fruit skins, fruit, vegetable skins, the yeast that lives on the surface of a fruit or vegetable will create fermentation, as we know. And so you just mix sugar, water, and the vegetable skins or fruit skins or the fruit cores. There'll be less yeast of the apple core, but more on the skin. But basically, you just stir it together and then leave it for 4 or 5 days, and you're going to create a tepache, in this case, and it's 4 days mixing with the yeast and the skins and the sugar, and just strain it through a sieve into a bottle, like a swing top bottle, leave it for another 4 days, and you have fruit champagne. You have amazing, if it's with a stopper, you can carbonate it and make it bubbly and delicious. And, again, that's made from food waste. And it's not all about food waste. Sometimes you have amazing quality produce that you want to save. You want to make as much of the produce as possible. And so fermentation, this is not food waste, just keeps a lot of amazing produce really good for a long time. And so we talked about, sauerkrauts and kimchis, and then you've got the kombucha kefir tepache. So there are two types of fermentation. But then the third one, and this is the most interesting and profound type of fermentation in gastronomy, is Koджі-based fermentation. So introducing these microbes, these enzymes through Koджі. Koджі is Aspergillus oryzae, which is a microbial community that we can grow on starch. So it likes starch, that's its favorite environment. So rice or barley or, various starchy objects and grains. So we can grow this mold, it's a mold, in an incubation. It's very simple, maybe not at the beginning, but, it becomes very simple in time. Now, when you have Koджі, and you could just buy dried Koджі, you don't have to make it. When you start influencing your food system with Koджí, incredible things happen. So Silo would, if you measured 100% of the produce in a month or a year, and you weighed how much food waste at the end of the year or the end of the month, and you worked out a percentage of food waste. So if we had 100 kilos of food, we might compost or waste 10%, or you've maximized 90%, right? So that's a typical fine dining restaurant's like 50%. Not your restaurant, not my restaurant, but a typical fine dining restaurant. So I think a lot of restaurants is like 70%, the food they use, and then 30% waste. Silo was about 10 to 15%. This is maybe, 10 years ago. And that was good. Yeah, it was really good. We're making lots of great preparations. But then when we started using Koджі, everything changed. Everything that was going into compost or sometimes down the drain, we talk about making butter. What do you do with all the buttermilk? You make cheese. What do you do with all the whey? These are liquids that you just tip down the drain, and it's enormous waste of these ingredients. So you introduce Koджí into those things, everything changes, everything, because it has this unique capacity in turning those proteins and those starches into a variety of flavors, textures, and from ingredients that would typically be wasted. Even Silo was wasting those things. Buttermilk whey, bran from milling flour. We would buy wheat and mill it into flour. And so there is this enormous opportunity to take that percentage closer to zero. And maybe, 5-6 years into understanding Koджí, we managed to achieve less than 1% food waste or compost, which is I don't think a restaurant in the world has ever done that. I don't think. I don't know.
I don't think so.
No,
either.
I don't think so.
Really.
And so we're very proud of that. But I make the point not to brag, not to boast, just to say that Koджí has this potential of capturing what would have otherwise been wasted, even in good restaurants, even in like great restaurants that are like very, excellent and resourceful at turning, as much food into delicious dishes as possible. There's always going to be, that 10% is always going to be there. 15, 20% is always going to be there. Koджí has this unique personality, this potential for that bit of the food waste to disappear.
when you talked about your veggies in the fridge and fermentation of these veggies that was in your fridge, I think that we are here in Ukraine, have some really deep tradition into fermentation, because basically my grandmother make the same thing that you make with your veggies. And not it is pickles, tomatoes, and so on and so on and so on. And the main, and typically the main reason for this is to have these products for the whole year. So I think that I will bring you some pickles from my grandmother.
Please,
yeah.
I would love to try your grandmother's pickles. We went to a traditional Ukrainian restaurant last night, and the fermentation quality was just incredible. Like, it was incredible. Like, the texture of the plums. The
plums was perfect.
The green tomato and the very ripe red tomato. And one was just delicious and crunchy, and the other was just like an explosion of juicy tomato. And it was just meticulous fermentation.
Yeah, great.
Very traditional.
And maybe you could give some advice about how to be more like zero waste, more sustainable for everyday life. You have already give us some nice techniques about veggies fermentation, but maybe you have some advices in other directions.
Do you have farmers markets in Ukraine?
Yes, we have.
A lot.
We're doing, and then maybe like a tip for cooking. So I said to Miralie and Bogdan at the restaurant, we're gonna make a vegetable scrap syrup, and it's gonna be a really important ingredient in our menu, very important. And so, how many kilos of scraps did Bogdan turn into? It was something like 15 kilos.
Yeah, around 50 kilos.
So 15 kilos of food that would have otherwise been wasted, we've turned into a syrup that is going to be a star ingredient on the first course, and that is going to serve hundreds of people. So 15 kilos is a lot of scraps, but that is going to magic into an amazing flavored, and it tastes great. It's super like umami, sweet. It's an amazing syrup. And on the first dish is a puffed miso crisp. So miso made from bread waste. So bread waste next to a bakery. All that bread waste goes into miso thanks to Koджі, and a very good fermenter here. We have miso made from bread waste. We make a puffed crisp from that. And then we spread vegetable scrap syrup on top of it, which is like umami and sweet and sticky, delicious. And then on top of that, we grate a cloud of frozen goat's cheese over the top of this crisp. And then guests eat it. And I'm just going to, honestly, it's just one of Silo's best dishes or snacks. And it's so thoughtfully zero waste. You know, the cheese is a primary ingredient. You know, that's not waste, of course. But the miso made from bread waste. Bread is the most wasted product on the planet.
Oh, really?
Potatoes are the most wasted ingredient, you know, from an agricultural point of view. But then when food has been prepared, bread is the number one most wasted. So you then turn that bread waste into a snack with vegetable scraps, turning into the syrup. And so people can make this syrup at home. It's super easy. You just collect lots of veg scraps until you've got the amount that'll nicely fit into your biggest pan. If your pan is this big, fill it a third full or 2/3, like maximum 2/3 full of veg scraps. Any veg scraps. The only thing not to add is citrus. Citrus it'll go very, very bitter. But any veg scraps, so stems of herbs, fruit skins, fruit cores, the tops of carrots, the skins of celeriac, whatever. Just all into the pan. Water, boil it for 2 hours until it's like mushy. Strain it through a sieve. And then add some sugar, just a little bit of sugar, and then reduce it down to 108 degrees. We did this yesterday. And then boom, that's it.
Great.
And it is amazing. Just think of it as, because sometimes people will make it and be like, what do I do with it? But if you think about it, like almost like hoisin sauce. So it's like a syrupy umami product. I don't want to say like Marmite. It's a bit like Marmite. Some people, do you have Marmite here? No, okay.
No.
Okay. So Marmite is like a black syrup. It's made from bread waste. Some people have Marmite.
Yeah, we have something similar. It's
What's
called,
it called?
patoka.
Patoka.
Yeah, it's like molasses, yes?
Yeah.
It's very similar.
Okay, but savory.
Yeah.
Okay, so use the veg scrap syrup like patoka.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, use it like that. I don't know how you use it here.
It's usually from what's very popular in Kherson and Crimea, and
Okay.
usually it's made from watermelon. It's like syrup
Really?
made from watermelon. Yes.
Oh, like pomegranate molasses.
Yeah,
Similar.
it's very similar, but pomegranate it's not grow in Ukraine, so it's why people do it from watermelon.
Okay, so use the vegetable scrap syrup like
It's very similar. I tried yesterday, so
yeah, like patoka, and that's just a really nice way of reducing food waste to create a valuable product in your own kitchen.
if we talk about education, like for chefs, you build like zero waste school. How do you make zero waste go into the DNA of chefs? Because it's, for me, like a chef, it's big problem to make people fall in love in this idea of sustainability. And many of these schools, like Med Academy, your school, try to do it.
It's a really, really good question. And I think the answer is in one of the words you used is love. Like if we can make chefs fall in love with sustainability, then that's how we change the culture of sustainability. So interestingly, when Silo started, sustainability was zero in the industry, zero. Then maybe 5 years later, where after Silo had been kind of going, it was starting, it wasn't zero, it was, I don't know, 10, 20, 30, percent like, oh yeah, I've heard about it, sustainability, yeah, but I don't love it. No one loved it. No one. And then I think there was a couple of things that happened globally, maybe not globally, but certainly in the Western world, in the UK, we have a very popular TV show called Blue Planet, or like Planet Earth, and it's a nature show. It's a mainstream. It's been going for decades, very, very many years, and it's always talking about nature. It's always going to Antarctica to watch penguins, and it's going to the jungle to see a tiger, and it's nature. But they made a very interesting decision. I think it was the year 2014, maybe. And there was a show called Planet Earth and Blue Planet. And the final episode of Blue Planet in whatever year it was, 2014, there was this huge shift in narrative, in the communication on that show. And it was exposing plastic pollution in the ocean. And then COVID happened, a global pandemic, and then the war in Ukraine. And so the environment, the nature, not wasting food, plastic bags.
I think COVID was like first.
Yeah.
After COVID, like many programs stopped to translate about
Exactly,
sustainability,
yeah.
because during the COVID, I think is the most worst period of time. The less sustainability was in the market.
Exactly. And so there has been this radical drop. And that's, you can understand why there's bigger things to worry about. There is. So there's a big drop, and you can see that in kitchens. You can see that in chefs just not thinking about these things that we're talking about. Chefs are like, not motivated. And so, yeah, if we care about it, how do we design a food system, coffee, food, whatever, that makes doing the right thing desirable? You know, if the young chefs, baristas, whatever, coffee roasters coming into our industry, how do we make a foundation that brings their attention to doing the right thing? How do we motivate and stimulate their mind to care? I think the younger generations, my son will be more motivated. I think, Greta Thunberg and other brilliant activists are speaking from a new generation that are inheriting our world. You know, they are being born into a world that is not healthy. And I think naturally we're going to have a big shift in the next generation. So, our generations of chefs and still thinking the same. We're still thinking the same ways as it's always been, which is not at all sustainable. But I think, and I hope there will be this younger generation which are like, nah, this is not okay. But I think that, to answer your question, I think we need to currently, right now, find ways of making them fall in love with doing it properly. Whether that's through Koджі-based fermentation, whether that's, motivating them to not. It's like, what incentives can we put on young chefs to be not wasting food? Like, do you make the incentive punishment, or do you make the incentive reward? Rewarding your young chefs to be creative and turn this food waste into a new product. So saying to the young chefs, right, there's a competition. Here is one type of food waste that you all have. The winner in 1 month's time, the winner of turning this food waste into a product wins. A meal. You take them to dinner or whatever, like a little bonus or whatever, like positive incentivization to do the right thing. This is what we can do, and it's not a solution for everything, but it's, within our generation, in our time, it's the best we can do, I think, is to make it positive and make them fall in love with the creativity around turning that waste into a product. It's got to be around positive reinforcement.
Great, thanks. I just want to ask you some questions about Michelin Green Star. You have received it in Silo. We didn't have Michelin here in Ukraine, but maybe you can say something that could be alternative for this reward and will be acceptable and will be interesting for Ukraine.
What awards are present here in Ukraine? What in England we have like rosettes, and we have 50 best world restaurants. We have blah blah blah. What is here in Ukraine?
We don't have nothing.
Nothing.
50 best.
We have some restaurants which included in 50 best discovery.
Well, there you go. There's a gap in the market. You should start today. We should found a new certification, Ukraine's best restaurant, or name it whatever you want, but build in the environment. Again, nothing perfect. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, but build in an awareness, a deep consideration, and authentic consideration from the environment. Do they use cling film? Do they use sous bags? Do they work directly with farmers? Are these things considered? Because you're going to win a special category, or I don't like that it's a category. So the Michelin is like Michelin stars and then green stars. It's like a separate category. And to me, philosophically, that's bullshit. I'm not picking on Michelin at all. It's the same. So being environmental is like, oh yeah, pat on the head. Like, it's a separate thing. It's not part of everything. And it needs to be part of everything. How could sustainability not be part of everything? It is the very fabric in which feeds our entire life, in materials, in what we eat. How is it not part of the architecture of everything? So there should be no green star. A star should be determined by the integrity of your environmental creation. Because if your 3 Michelin star restaurant is the planet, if you're the planet in bad ways, you don't get 3 stars. That's bullshit. If you're not planet, you have a better chance of getting 3 stars. That's how it should be. And that's not a criticism on the Michelin. This is a very new subject. This is a new consciousness that we're all kind of adapting to. So it's not a criticism, but it is bullshit.
Yeah, I get it.
And so we should build our own in Ukraine.
Let's start. Great.
Where is Ukrainian restaurants stand on the map right now? We talked with you yesterday about some restaurants in UK, in London especially. And have you heard something about Ukrainian restaurants?
Yeah, I mean, those 3 restaurants in London, the Ukrainian restaurants, get a lot of attention. They're very popular and they're very well received. And it's always been high on my radar because I've met so many great Ukrainian chefs. In fact, in Copenhagen, I have 2 very good friends. And London, I've got lots and lots and lots of very respectable Ukrainian, not just chefs, but people in the industry, sommeliers, also in the creative industry. Ukraine always stands out as there is something brilliant going on here. It's part of why I'm here. I want to say the main reason I'm here is to be here to support you and show some love. But also, I have an inherent respect for this country because the people I've met from here are very impressive. Very, very creative, professional, interesting, high standards. So I have, before I came here, a very high expectation, a very strong belief that this is a place where, amazing things are happening in the food and drink industry.
Thank you for these words. It's really honest. Nice to hear it from you. Before we start our podcast, we have a conversation about coffee, about natural wine, and you have very interesting ideas about natural wine, and I want to speak about these types of our industry, not about the food, but about wine, natural wine. What is your opinion on this movement?
I love this question. Thank you for asking. Anthropologically, anthropology is an interesting subject, a bit like philosophy, a bit like sociology, but it's kind of looking at behaviors of humans, right? And from the sort of behavioral point of view, I find it very interesting why natural wine is so popular. And it is so popular. It's also very polarizing. It separates people a lot. You have people that really dislike natural wine, and you have people that really love it. It's like the deep passion, the kind of you go to a natural wine fair, where you go do all the tastings. The passion is just so intense. It's like, why is that? Like, why is that so intense? Because it's philosophical. They may or may not know how philosophical it is, but it's about values. It's about seeing the world as natural or not natural. Mm-hmm. Hence the name Natural Wine. And that's great. What an amazing, great thing. A lot of it in the natural wine world is a lot of like trend, you know, like the rest of the world. Trend. Is this trending? Is this popular? Blah, 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 blah. But it does come from a good place. Like it does. It's a really good place. Like natural wine is like a natural product that is closer to the expression of terroir, to viticulture, to grapes, to the people making it, all this kind of like artistic expression from a natural world. Beautiful. It's almost poetic, you know, it's gorgeous. And then we get into the flavor and the culture bit, you know, where here in these cities, we're drinking it and this tastes like pig shit. You know, a lot of people that don't like natural wine say it tastes like piss, say it tastes like farmyard, you know, which is such a silly thing. And obviously there are natural wines that do taste a bit like piss, do taste bad. There are. But then there are also like some of the most elegant, sophisticated wines, right? And we all know this. We're speaking to an audience of foodies, right? But you have this huge divide of people that are very like natural wine, conventional wine. But for me, from a flavor point of view, I find natural wine so much more so much more expression. There's so much more range of different expressions and even textures and colors and conventional wine I'm less interested in. I still like, it's still very well made and, you know, but this is subjective. This is my personal opinion. And I'm not saying which is right or which is wrong. I just think it's interesting. And conventional wine, it's just a lot more sterile and clean and clinical. Just less, I guess the word interesting is less interesting to me. Now, in the world of coffee, and I've been thinking about this for like more than 10 years, and I've been saying it directly to people in the coffee industry, some of the best roasters in the world. I used to live with one of the best roasters in the world in London. And she and many other the world's best coffee roasters 10 years ago were like, nah, we're not listening to me. And I was like, natural coffee. So for any of the audience that don't know what that means, it's a coffee seed, a bean, is part of a cherry. Coffee is a fruit, a cherry, in which the bean, the seed, is the thing that we roast and extract coffee from. But that's part of a fruit. And that fruit, the skin is called cascara. And then you have the mucosity, the kind of fruit in between the
multiple layers
of fruit. And then that is all washed away. So washed coffee, 99% non-natural coffee, you might say, is just washed away. And the amount of waste there is enormous, absolutely enormous. And you're losing so much of the natural expression of flavors. The terroir, the fermentation is gone because you wash that away. And so that produces a very clean, clinical flavor. And again, subjectively, that's what people like. But then you have other people that like natural wine, not necessarily like natural coffee, but it's kind of the same thing.
Absolutely.
And we are witnessing the flavors of fermentation, of fruit, of the terroir much more expressively. It's a much broader flavor profile, and it's just more interesting. Again, interesting. And so in the world of, and I understand that from a roaster's point of view, there's a lot more concerns and considerations with natural coffee because of consistency. And that I hear and I respect, but I just want to drink natural coffee way more. I will always, always, always ask for a natural or a honey process. If I'm feeling, if I'm speaking to someone like you two, maybe we can try some co-fermented coffees, which is where they will literally put coffee with a different fruit or a different liquid. I think mostly it's done with fruits like peaches or strawberries, and they will ferment coffee with peaches. And it will taste like peaches. It's crazy. It's very, very different from your regular cup of coffee. But it's interesting and it's fun. And it can be badly made and it can be brilliantly made. There is, for people in the who have very high standards, are very excellent first, you can make it excellent. It can be as perfectly executed as washed coffee. It can. Maybe there's a bit more to consider, sure. So anyway, and I think the rise of natural wine and maybe natural coffee is a really beautiful movement because it shows that we're changing to want to taste nature more. And I know that sounds really profound, but I believe it. I believe anthropologically that's a thing that is changing in our food culture.
Yeah, thank you, Douglas, for such a open answer. I think that we should have to speak about our quiz. So we have a quiz for people who will watch us, who will listen to us. Usually our guest ask one question and people will comment the answer, and the best answer that you will choose will get 2 tickets for the next pop-up in Mіралі. So what will be the questions? So,
when in history was the bin designed?
Okay.
Good question.
Yeah, when, are we talking 40 years, 100 years, 1,000 years? You tell me when the bin started to exist.
Great. Thank you. Really nice question. So, moving forward.
Yes.
You can, or I can.
Or
I think I forgot about one question. So, sustainability. We were talking a lot about sustainability, and when I think we were talk about sustainability, we mean food. But sustainable restaurant is not about sustainability in food. It's also about sustainability in relationship between people. Could you please share with us your thoughts about this kind of our industry, this kind of our work? Because in hospitality, we work with people a lot, with colleagues, with guests. Maybe you have some insights how you work with your team in silo.
Yeah, just to, earlier we put bins and fermentation into 3 categories. I don't know why I always put things into 3 categories, but with sustainability, the 3 categories in my mind are, the environmental sustainability, which is more so my specialty, zero waste and, the environmental sustainability. Then you have economic or commercial sustainability. So if our restaurants are making lots of money, then that's sustainable because we can pay farmers, we can pay staff really well. And then you have the human sustainability. Are people inspired? Are they nourished? Are they doing what they believe in? Are they not exhausted? Or if they are exhausted, is it a good kind of exhaustion, a level of exhaustion that they can sustain? This is the human sustainability. And so these 3 different camps, these 3 different pillars, or whatever you want to call it, of sustainability, environmental, commercial, and human, And my experience running Silo, I've learned a lot about how not to lead, I didn't consider what I'm telling you now isn't something that I knew when I was 18. I only know this because I've got it wrong a lot. I was angry. I didn't pay myself for 5 years. I used to sleep above the toilet in Silo Brighton. I literally slept above the toilet with mice. I didn't pay myself, and I was just not well mentally because I was working so hard. I was so aggressive in the commitment to this environmental thing. I wasn't thinking about the sustainability of the team, certainly not of myself. I wasn't even thinking about the business making money. I just thought, okay, it needs to make enough money, whatever. Like, I'm going to break ground and show the world like what a truly sustainable restaurant looks like, which, there's a lot of irony there. And then I burnt out. I had a mental breakdown. A lot of bad things happened. And then I realized, okay, you can't have this without this and this. Mm-hmm. So it needs to work in harmony. It needs to coexist, the different types of sustainability. So not one thing is more important than the other. They are all very important. They're all intrinsically linked. But I think with the team, there's a lot of psychology to understand. Well, actually, there's such a thing as not having enough discipline. Like being a parent, like it's not good to give the child everything they want. That's not good. There is a line in which you should understand that is overall the best outcome for the child or for the team. Giving them everything they want, that's not a good idea because they will unconsciously manipulate that generosity. That's not good. That's bad for business. That's bad for them. People misunderstand pain. So like pain is inevitable, struggle, suffering. Like we can't go through this life and everything's good all the time. It's not. We need to have bad days to be stronger. And it's the same with leadership. You have to lead. And sometimes it's not what people want to hear, but it's for their best interest that they hear that they didn't do a good job and it's not okay. And there is that clear line of balance. Again, balance.
I just want to say balance.
Yeah.
Everywhere. So. Thank you, Doug. Thank you.
If we say about what are you watching right now, like who inspire you? Now you're like a big chef and maybe you can say about some chefs or some projects in the world which are inspire you.
It's a really, really good question. And I've split my mind into like two things that I really want to say. I really want to be positive and say that this person, but actually there are people, not many chefs, if I'm completely honest. I see more people maybe in the different artistic practices, I always look to different industries for inspiration. I look to maybe I'm going to come back to that because I'm struggling to think of who. But I think I can offer an answer which is maybe more interesting. So I think I remember being a teenager and reading the menu of the restaurant The Fat Duck. And I was reading about snail porridge and liquid nitro green tea mousse, liquid nitrogen green tea mousse. I was like, what is this? And I remember how that made me feel. You know, when you first discover your first great band or your first great romantic love, you know how you feel just like so much energy and so much like passion and love, and your body is just like, you're on a high frequency of consciousness. Your vibration is so high. That's an amazing place to be. And that's what being inspired does, right? You know, you've got this very high frequency of consciousness. Michael Pollan is a journalist who is he doesn't have a phone, and he doesn't, and he's a journalist from America, very sort of like, I don't know, maybe you'll see him, and he's very softly spoken, he's very polite, he's not like, you know, rah, 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 crazy arty guy. He's very careful and he's very considered, and not someone that I was maybe inspired by 10 years ago, but like, he has had this incredible career in which the first subject he wrote about was the industrial food system. The Omnivore's Dilemma is a book. It's a very good book. Highly recommend reading The Omnivore's Dilemma. And it was about industrial food systems. It was about, you know, how unsustainable, blah, blah, blah. And then he went on to like a different subject. He went into like health and nutrition maybe. And then he went into even more an interesting subject. He went into psychedelics. And he wrote a book called How to Change Your Mind. And understanding the subculture of people that take psychedelics and what that means and what values there are in psychedelics. And yeah, he wrote a book, brilliant, absolute brilliant book on how to change your mind. And now he's gone into the subject of consciousness. So he's just so inspiring. He is so inspiring, and just like how he keeps shifting his focus. And he has one of my favorite qualities in any human. My favorite quality in any human is if you are willing to be wrong. If the person that you have become today has maybe doing something very strictly, and you have the ability to see maybe this is too strict. Maybe I could be more empathetic. Maybe I could be more, you know, considerate, or like whatever. Like, if you're willing to change, I love that about a type of person. I think it's such a good quality, because we are, as a species, often very dogmatic. You know, we're like, this is the way the world is. My beliefs are this. You know, and that's why there's a war, because there are these strict beliefs that people are unwilling to change their worldview, their beliefs. And that's where tension happens. That's where problems occur. And I believe that somebody like Michael Pollan, this guy, he is amazing because he's willing to change how he sees the world. Like, the world that he saw when he was a kid just keeps changing, but he's willing to, because there is an infinite amount of complexity to this world we live in, and to our brains, and to everything is complex. And so we must be willing to keep learning, to adapt, because that's what's happening in the world. You know, adaptation, that's what nature is always doing. Like, the one constant since like literally the Big Bang, what is nature always doing? Always. It is changing. It is diversifying. It's getting more and more complex and diverse. It's changing constantly. Why is it hard to industrialize natural food? Because it's constantly changing. And as a thoughtful group of humans, I think that fundamentally we should be willing to change. And I'm inspired by him, Michael Pollan, because he's just a great arbiter, a great spokesperson for, like, you know, remaining objective and not having dogmatic worldviews. And I just love that about him, and he inspires me for that reason.
Sorry, Doug, but we are running out of time. Really, it was amazing. I want to ask you a lot of questions for this podcast, but really sorry, we have to leave because we are running out of time. I hope you enjoyed, because I enjoyed really a lot. So thank you for this time together.
I must say, this is one of my favorite podcasts that I've done.
Really?
Honestly, yeah. It is. I feel so. I'm very sensitive, and when I'm in a room of people where I feel judged, I'm very stiff, and the podcast is really not good. But yeah, I feel very welcomed by you all. So thank you. I really appreciate it. So,
great.
And just generally, Miralee, for welcoming me to Ukraine and to see something in me where the amount of work he's done to get me here, like, it's enormous amount of work. So I have enormous gratitude and respect and appreciation for you bringing me here. And honestly, it means a lot.
Thank you for coming.